Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balkavich. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday. And today we're talking about your thyroid physiology and your GI tract. And this is just a small snippet of information. Probably do a longer discussion on this on a future podcast. But for today, just going to talk about your microbiota. That's the bacteria that lives in your gut and why does that matter? I recently had a client who struggling trying to fix her T4 and T3 in her bloodstream because she's hoping that if she just gets enough T4 and T3 in the bloodstream that's going to make all of her symptoms go away. And we talked about her GI tract and she's like, why does my GI tract matter? It's not a big deal to me. My big concern is my thyroid physiology. So we had to go through a discussion of why what goes on in her gut matters, and we touched on just some of the ways that the bacteria in the gut and is going to impact her health, her thyroid physiology, her thyroiditis, her immune system. And so let's talk about why the gut flora, the microbiota, is really important. The gut flora has a big role in vitamin synthesis. So we take a lot of vitamins and nutrients, right, because we're deficient, but really if we eat good food, healthy food, and we got good bacteria, the bacteria in our gut is making a lot of vitamins for us. The bacteria has a role in digesting our dietary fibers, and the digestion of those dietary fibers can produce things called short chain fatty acids, and the short chain fatty acids are really important for immune system regulation and maintenance of the tight junctions. The gut bacteria plays a role in regulating your immune system and your immune response. It plays a role in hormone and neurotransmitter production and regulation. So really important roles in influencing our physiology. So nearly all thyroid disorders are immune-driven processes, whether you have Graves' disease, whether you have Hashimoto's, whether you're told you just have thyroiditis, it's all immune-driven for the most part. And guess what? 70% of the immune system surrounds your GI tract. So really important to have a healthy GI tract. But the microbiota regulates the immune system both in the GI tract, and it helps regulate the immune system outside the GI tract. So even though you may not have GI symptoms, but if you have thyroiditis, you have immune-related issues, autoimmune issues, the GI bacteria can still be playing a role in that. The microbiota help regulate self-tolerance. So what does that mean? That helps the immune system determine if your own body is the pieces of tissue that are floating around the body are yours, or the immune system recognizes your thyroid gland or your skin or some other cell or tissue as whether recognizes it as foreign or part of your own body. So really important, self-tolerance. The microbiota help regulate the tight junctions. So we have cells in the GI tract, we have cells all over the body, but the cells are often held together side by things called tight junctions. And these tight junctions prevent things from going in between the cells. Now there's always a level of permeability, but we don't want excessive permeability. And so the microbiota help regulate those tight junctions. So it's really important to have healthy microbiota. The microbiota help regulate bile acids. So your liver produces bile acids. They get dumped into the gallbladder. It gets kind of concentrated. And when you eat, the bile duct in the gallbladder release bile acids into the bile duct, and then they enter into the GI tract. And the bile acids then help manage the amount and types of bacteria that grow in the GI tract. It helps you break down and digest and absorb your fats. And those bile acids help maintain the tight junction. The microbiota can convert some of those bile acids from primary bile acids to secondary bile acids. The microbiota also from breaking down dietary fibers, produce these things called short chain fatty acids. And the short chain fatty acids regulate the immune system and they regulate the tight junctions. And so one of the most popular short chain fatty acid they might have heard of is something called butyrate. Butyrate plays a big role in immune system regulation and that tight junction formation. So let's just kind of talk about how things could go wrong. Stress, excessive stress can change your microbiota. Too much, too little exercise can change your microbiota. The food you eat can change the microbiota. Alcohol can change the microbiota. Medications you take can change the microbiota. How you breathe can change the microbiota. How well you sleep can change the microbiota. So there's a lot of things that can change the microbiota. But let's just talk about all the things as stress in general, okay? So when we have an excessive level of stress, alcohol, diet, lack of sleep, poor breathing, emotional stress, excessive, exhaustive exercise. We get too much stress. This can change the gut flora, and this can result in a change in the amount of the types of bacteria that actually produce the short chain fatty acids. And when we have this reduction in short chain fatty acid producing bacteria, we have a drop in the short chain fatty acids. When we have a drop in the short chain fatty acids, this decreases the amount of T regulatory cells. And the T reg cells are the cells that kind of help balance the immune system so it doesn't become hypo or hyperactive. And so when we have a down regulation of the T regulatory cells, then we see an increase of the inflammatory cytokines. These Th17 cells increase, they increase inflammatory cytokines. And with this, what happens in the GI tract is you're going to get a reduction of T3 in the GI tract. And so when you have a reduction of T3 in the GI tract, this can affect your motility and the movement of your GI tract. It can also increase the degranulation of mast cells, and that can result in increased histamine in the GI tract. That can result in food sensitivity, food reactivity, itchy skin, things like that. Now, are the mast cells bad guys? Not really. The mast cells may be coming to help in this situation. There's a threat, there's some potential damage, there's inflammation. The mast cells may be coming to help find the threat, get rid of it, but the mast cells also hold on to T3, so by coming there and degranulating, they can also provide some of the T3 to keep the bowels moving and to support some of the function. Another thing that can happen when we have problems in the GI tract with the bacteria, we have this decreased T3 that's occurring. We have decrease in the short chain fatty acids. This results in decreased tight junction integrity. So now those tight junctions become more permeable. As they become more permeable, we start to develop more leakiness of the GI tract. People have heard the term leaky gut syndrome. As a result, we wind up having poorly digested proteins, the peptides, crossing the barrier. We can have toxins from the organisms crossing the barrier, or the organisms themselves crossing the barrier, and this upregulates the immune system which is surrounding the GI tract. This can result in increased food intolerances, and it can result in loss of self-tolerance, so we can get immune damage to our own GI tract. The combination of these things can increase the GI and systemic inflammation, and because of all of this occurring, we can often see more thyroiditis, more damaged signaling chemicals hitting the thyroid gland, and that initiating the thyroiditis at the thyroid gland. One more piece here is that when we have this excessive stress response going on, we shift from parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system balance to an upregulation of the sympathetic nervous system and a downregulation of the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest state. So we're not going to sleep well, we're not going to recover well, we're not going to digest food well. So what happens when the stress and increased sympathetic nervous system, we get reduced peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. So circulating T3 goes down, we'll get a drop in the T3 inside the cells, and especially within the GI tract, we'll get reduced stomach acid production. So now we're not breaking the food down as well. We can get gas, bloating, reflux early on in the meal. We can have decreased bile production and release due to low T3 state. So now we can get bacterial overgrowth in the small bowel. We can't absorb fats as well as we used to. And we can also get a reduction of pancreatic enzymes, digestive enzymes from the pancreas. So again, bacteria can overgrow. We can't break down and digest our food, and that creates all kinds of digestive issues, and it creates bacterial imbalance. So you can see that there's a huge importance into the type of bacteria that grows in your GI tract. So what can you do on your own? Well, a couple key things you can do is, and if you pick up a copy of the Thyroid Debacle, in part 3 of the book, we talk about all these things you can do to improve your health and fitness without even seeing a functional medicine practitioner yet. But one of the simple things to do is shift your diet from a processed food diet to a whole food diet. Just start there. Don't worry about organic or inorganic at this point. Just shift to a whole food diet most of the time. That can be beneficial. Reduce the amount of alcohol that you're consuming. Okay, none is probably the best, but reduce it from where you're at, because alcohol will make a change. Work on improving your sleep time and quality. Reduce or manage the emotional stress a bit better. Definitely do moderate exercise, but not exhaustive or too much. And then if none of that works, seek a functional medicine evaluation.